Filthy, outrageously animalic, simply unwearable. Those are some of the descriptors used to describe Afrika Olifant by Nishane. But in this video, I'm going to go over why I don't agree with those descriptions. Stick around for this one, guys, while I unravel this misunderstood beast. Hey guys, welcome back to Real Scent Review. Tonight I'm going over Afrika Olifant. Out of all the Nishane offerings, it's not one of the most popular, but I think it's definitely one of the most vilified. A lot of people call this just outrageously animalic and impossible to wear. I, however, have a different opinion on the matter. So Afrika Olifant was released in 2015. It's a creation of Jorge Lee. He's done a lot of different perfumes for the House of Nishane. Really good perfumer. He always adds an interesting flair to his creations. This perfume is apparently inspired by the African elephant. Yes, it's a large, strong, formidable beast, but it also has a lot of grace. And I think that's very fitting for this particular fragrance, and I'm going to be going over that more into depth later on in this video. Afrika Olifant, meaning African elephant in the Afrikaans language. It's a language spoken in South Africa. It's made to recreate the smell of a safari. Although, you know, I can see where they're going. I might not necessarily fully agree with that, but we'll get into that a bit later. An interesting fact that I've discovered about the African elephant is that out of all mammals, the African elephant is the one with the highest number of scent receptors. So basically, the African elephant has the best sense of smell in the world. It's able to decipher between, scents that humans cannot even fathom or conceptualize. Although I can promise you right off the bat, you do not need a sense of smell that powerful in order to appreciate this fragrance. It's a pretty strong one, and again, I'll get into that later on. Going over the bottle design a little bit here, we can see it's the Nishane Extrait de Parfum on the golden plaque here. The city in particular in this one is Cape Town, which is a city in South Africa. In another one of my Nishane reviews, I go over how each of the fragrances is inspired by a world city. Now, this one is supposed to, pertain to the African elephant. I myself would not have chosen Cape Town as the city of inspiration here. I probably would have gone more so with something like Chobe or Zambezi. But apart from that, the standard Nishane bottle, really solid, heavy cap here. And there's not a whole lot of friction, which matters because the bottle itself is also quite heavy, even though this is only a 50 ml bottle. Never pick this one up by the cap. The box design now, it's the standard style drawer design of Nishane. Of course, we open the box here. There's an envelope, and below this envelope is a place where the fragrance sits. We get the standard Nishane postcard that comes with every Nishane fragrance. This one here, we can see an elephant. Looks like it's walking next to a baobab tree, maybe in a savanna somewhere. Interesting stuff. And if you can see here, the elephant looks like it's wearing labdanum flowers on its head, which is very appropriate. So let's get to the most important part, which is how this smells. So what I get in this fragrance is the following. In the beginning, I get a lot of myrrh and labdanum. In the mid, leather, castoreum, frankincense. And in the dry down, musk, castoreum, and amber. So this opens up with a blast of myrrh and labdanum. So the myrrh especially I find to be particularly strong, and it gives off that kind of fruity, dry, resinous incense feeling. But I definitely get a big fruity blast in the beginning here. Some types of myrrh can give off, a fruity characteristic. And I'm also getting a heavy dose of labdanum. Labdanum gives off a suede-like accord. It's almost like a soft leather. And there's also a bit of sweetness, some smokiness, and I think I get some musk in there as well. Very nice opening, although quite strong and maybe a little bit jarring for some people. And as this goes drying down, I get some leather, castoreum, and frankincense. So the smoky characteristics are starting to gain a little bit more prominence here with the frankincense in the mid. The resinous qualities of that incense are also making themselves more and more prominent as well. Now in the mid here, yes, we get a dose of leather, oily leather, very strong leather. Not animalic, but it's dark, it's juicy, it's oily, it's a very full type of leather. But in the mid, we do start to get a little bit of castoreum. So the castoreum is going to give off a dry, kind of smoky, leathery characteristic. And there is definitely an animalic tinge to that castoreum. Castoreum itself, if you don't know where that ingredient originates from, feel free to look that up. But yeah, the point is there definitely is an animalic tinge in the middle here coming from that castoreum. And in the dry down here, the main note is going to be amber. It's a slightly sweet amber, but I think it leans more so just balsamic, maybe even a little bit dusty as well. So a dusty balsamic amber with a touch of that characteristic amber sweetness as well. And that castoreum is becoming even more smoky, just a slight bit more dirty as well. And the dark, dry leather characteristic is becoming more and more apparent in the dry down too. And those two notes are joined by some musk. Now this particular musk is not your standard just fluffy, soft musk that you get in a lot of different fragrances. This one here does lean just a touch animalic. Now what I mean by that is it doesn't smell fecal or ammoniacal or pissy or anything like that. It smells a little bit like just animal fur. So technically animalic, but not in a dirty or off-putting way. But anyway, that type of musk definitely exists in the dry down to this one here. So all in all, if I had to summarize this in a very simple way, it's a resinous, incensey, leathery, musky fragrance with a definite animalic tinge hanging in the background throughout most of the lifespan. Now, having said that, you know, I like to consider myself a very open-minded fragrance enthusiast. I've smelled many fragrances throughout my fragrance journey. And I have to say, I have smelled things that are far, far more animalic than this fragrance here. But more than a safari, or more than a savanna, or more than being in an elephant den, this reminds me kind of like an old, dusty, kind of damp basement. Maybe at one point there was a woodworking station or even a fireplace. Some vague woodiness and definitely some smokiness hanging around in the back of this fragrance here. Now that's just my personal opinion. There are definitely going to be people, most likely closer to the beginner stages of collecting, who are going to find this off-putting, maybe even a little bit repulsive. Now hear me out. There are absolutely some animalic characteristics to this fragrance. To my nose, they're coming from castoreum. I don't get any oud, I don't get any civet, although those ingredients are technically the official ones that you can find on certain websites. But to my nose, it's mostly that just dry, dusty, leathery, animalic castoreum. If you are a fan of dark, leathery, incensey, and otherwise resinous fragrances, I urge you to check this one out. If you have even a little bit of experience collecting, if you just give this one a chance, you will probably grow to appreciate it, or at the very least, you won't find this off-putting like a lot of people seem to think. If you can handle fragrances like, I don't know, Black Incense Malaki by Chopard, or even Oud Essentiel by Guerlain, I think you will absolutely appreciate this fragrance as well. Those fragrances don't smell the same as this one. I'm just referring to more so like the level of challenging that all those fragrances have. So put in other words, I don't really personally think that this is an overly challenging fragrance. To me, this fragrance is really an amazing representation of resinous incense and leather. Man, the resins in this one should be talked about a lot more than they are. I feel like, again, this is a really wonderful representation of resinous qualities in a fragrance. Also, the incense is to die for, and those leathery characteristics as well, both coming from the actual leather note, so like really oily, juicy, full leather, to that dusty, dry, animalic, leathery castoreum, and also a little bit of that dusty suede from the labdanum note in this. This is a really, really nice fragrance for fans of, like I said, those notes, resinous notes, incense, and leather. You know what? The animalic notes do exist, but as far as I'm concerned, they're just a paragraph in an otherwise long story. They form a part of the story, but they are not the be-all, end-all. They are not the main theme of the story, at least in my opinion. I have had other people sample this. People who have caught whiffs of this while I was passing by them in the streets have stopped me and asked me what I'm wearing. They really enjoyed the scent. They didn't find it animalic. So here's what I can gather. If you're catching wafts of this, if you're smelling the sillage of this, mostly what you're gonna get is kind of a smoky, resinous leather. If you smell this, you know, closer to your skin, yeah, you can pick up a little bit of that animalic castoreum. But going around outside at nighttime especially, this is a really magical fragrance, and I'm not the only one who thinks that. However, the wearer's opinion, your opinion, is the only one that should really matter. If you're going to wear a fragrance, I always believe that you should wear it because you yourself enjoy it. You know, like I keep saying, if you're a beginner, I wouldn't recommend this to you. But if you have just a little bit of experience branching out beyond the normal blue aquatics and warm gourmands, I urge you to try this, especially if you have a preference for darker fragrances. Let's talk about the performance a little bit. It starts off very strong. I admit the opening is a little strong, but the overall projection, I would say moderate to high. I get, you know, almost an arm's length projection for the first hour and a half. So it's not like the most beast mode projector I've ever found by any means. The longevity is very good, 9 to 10 hours total on my skin. But you know, the opening of this fragrance might deceive you a little bit. The opening would probably have most people believe that this is going to be an absolute bombastic monster powerhouse fragrance. And to some people who don't have a lot of experience in collecting, that might be the case. But if you're a little bit farther along on your fragrance journey, I think that you will find this to be a very good performer, definitely, but not necessarily beast mode. You know, this fragrance itself, it's inspired by the large, foreboding, brooding, intimidating Afrika Olifant, but it has a real softness to it as well, a soft side. So for those who are willing to scrape beyond the surface and discover the graceful, softer, relaxing qualities that this fragrance offers, I guarantee you will not be disappointed. But, you know, I'm just saying myself, I disagree with a lot of the vilifying reviews out there regarding this fragrance. At the end of the day, very important, sample this for yourself. Another thing regarding the price, this is not even one of Nishane's most crazily priced fragrances. You can find this on discounters usually for a very reasonable price. I actually found this bottle here for less than 100 euros, full, brand new from a website here in Europe. That was a few months ago. Prices will vary, but usually you can find this within the $100 to $125 US range, and also the 90 euro to 130 euro price range as well. So overall, quite reasonable for the quality and performance that we're getting here. So yeah, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure reviewing this misunderstood beast here. Hope you've enjoyed the review. I really hope you can get your hands on this one to sample it. And until next time, keep it real.